Hey, I'm Ryan. This is my brother Daniel. This is Rolls in the Family, and we are excited to be here because we are getting to talk about some of our favorite games of all time. In fact, Daniel, isn't that exciting?
I'm excited. We
were talking about.
You say that. I thought we were here to talk about something else, but
yeah, I don't tell Daniel the topics ahead of time. I just spring them on him. We are now to our 20 through 11 games of all time. These are getting spicy. These are getting into some of the ones where like I see it and it's like, man, there's a lot of games that you think like should be higher, but you forget like how many good games there are. It's like, oh, I guess, man, it's all the way down at 18 or something. But these are like favorite games here. And they're games that you can all check out for yourself. I mean, I can't guarantee they're all available at this exact moment in time, but you can follow the links we have in the description.
They'll take you somewhere.
If you want to. They'll take you somewhere on a journey over the interwebs. Yes, you can check those out for yourself, and it's fun in these lists. We kind of have historical data, so we're able to see some of these things like how do games move around, new games onto the list, where do they fall in the next year? Did they have staying power? Or were they just like a flash in the pan? Which is why I'm going to say that the word flash is the word for our game giveaway. If you did not know this, we are doing a game giveaway, and in each one of these videos, you can get an entry by taking the secret word, in this case, flash, and entering it into the Google form that is linked in the description below. You can also go back, if you haven't already, to the previous, three videos, and get entries for each of those videos. And in our final video, our 10 through 1, we're going to be announcing 3 lucky winners who will get to select a game off of our top lists to be their own, to love and to cherish and to play.
Wow.
Hopefully. So that is exciting. But let's start just, loving on some games here. This is
going to be a big love fest going on here today,
big love fest.
I hope you guys came here for that.
Daniel's going to get this started.
I'm going to get us started. I'm going to love on I'm trying to scan here. It looks like my favorite card game. One that it's like kind of unbelievable to me how much fun this game is when it's literally just a deck of cards that is very similar to a normal deck of cards outside of a few unique ones. And this is going to go to Tichu. So Tichu I got 0 plays of Tichu this last year, which I guess maybe isn't super surprising because it can be a little hard to not only, you need 4 people exactly, but also it isn't the easiest teach always just because it's the rule set's relatively simple, but
it's got some depth.
But it's got some depth. Yeah, and especially if people have a kind of base level of trick taking games, that definitely helps. But yeah, there's a little more depth to it. But that depth is why Tichu is so good. I mean, so you're playing on 2 teams, 2 versus 2. The partner dynamics in Tichu are so fun because you can't talk to each other about what you have, but you're ultimately the goal is to try to go out first. And so you get this hand of cards or really it's not even just personally go out first. It's the goal. You're really is trying to get your team to go out first, have the best chance of getting the most points. And so you look at your hand, and I just love, and I think this is a common theme, honestly, in some of the others of our favorite games, is getting just handed something and having to figure out what am I going to do with this? Honestly, we just recently played a game of Arcs on Tabletop Simulator. That's one thing I really loved about that is you get this hand and you're like, what am I going to do? Well, it's a similar thing in Tichu. And so then you're also like reading, like based off what's played, like what do you think your opponents have? What do you think your partner has? The tension of when do I beat something? Like, some of someone's a beginner to teach you when they'll just beat everything, right away, and then find themselves kind of stuck at the end with, I can't actually win any tricks anymore. So you have to like be able to look at your hand and see how can I do the best that I can with what I've been given. This game is so great. It's just really, in my opinion, the best card game, trick taking game, and it's the one that will always, if I have an opportunity, love to play it. So I really should get a game of it going this next year. My wife loves it as well. So there you go. Kick things off.
Find that group of 4.
Was that enough loving, Ryan? Was that enough?
That was pretty good.
That satisfy the love fest that there are people are here for?
It was a pretty good start to the love fest. And who would have thought that this love fest was going to start with a direct crossover?
Oh my gosh.
With Tichu at my number 20.
Yeah, we got feedback. People want these videos faster, so we just made our lists, all
match up. We synced them up. Yep. Yes. Tichu, it's great. We've played it for a long time. I'm over 100 total plays of it.
Yeah. Wow, you've played a lot.
And when I have the opportunity, I bet I probably have quite a few more plays than you do. I had a group during college that we would play this pretty regularly. Go back to the apartment after classes and just play Tichu. And when you have a group that all knows the game really well, and just like you start to play on this a little bit more advanced level than like everybody learning the game, it's so fun and it doesn't get old. Like the variety of the hands that come up and just the way the hands play out. Because you were talking about when it comes around to you, there's always this decision of like, should I beat this? And like a lot of times that decision is like, well, I could if I break up this thing, because it's got this whole element of cards there's different things you can lead. You could lead a straight or a 3 of a kind or a full house or a pair. And so certain cards, it's like, well, I could play my 2 aces to beat this pair, but I could also use those as 2 individual aces that could win, 2 leads for me.
Right.
So there's, such a tough decision, and like that feeling of when you beat something and in the back of your mind, you're thinking, if someone beats this, I'm hosed. But you're like, you don't want like to convey that. There is a little bit of bluffing. There's a little bit of just like, do it. And because you want them to think like, oh, like, is this the right time to use the dragon or something
throw a bomb
to win
down.
it? Yeah. Well, and the bomb's just completely, there's times where someone's super confident that they're playing something out and the bomb just wrecks it. And then I love, it's similar to what I talked about with Crokinole that I like with the scoring. Tichu's a little bit similar, that usually like both teams score in a round, but one team will usually score more than the other. Although if you happen to get the double victory, it'll be 200-0.
Right.
And so there is this element of, it's a race to get to 1,000 points. You can come back, like, and even if you're way behind, and so it keeps that like tension and drama up till the end. And if you get down a ton, you can even get to the point where you call it Grand Tichu to just like give yourself a chance. So it's got some nice drama and potential for that kind of thing. Just a game I don't think we're ever going to tire of. Doesn't get played nearly as much these days, but love when I get the opportunity to get a group together to play some Tichu.
Yeah, it's a great point. It really does have that just group drama. Like I can just think of so many moments where it's like, oh my gosh,
and if you get to the end of the game and both teams are almost at 1,000, it's like tense.
It's so tense, which I love. Oh man. Man, Ryan, we gotta play some Tichu. Okay. But a game that is objectively better than Tichu, Ryan.
Of course.
Number 19.
There's like 19 of them that are better than Tichu.
Yes. Is another game I didn't get to the table this last year. It is a very just big game, kind of a lot going on in the line of a designer who makes Euro games that we really enjoy. And this is another great creation of his, and this goes to A Feast for Odin. I was thinking about this. There really is just a lot going on here in A Feast for Odin. Yeah. Obviously, the very first place this starts is with the number of action spots that you can go to out on the board. You unfold this and you're like, oh my gosh, there's like, I don't know what the number is of actions.
Smorgasbord. It's like 68 or something.
It's like, okay, it's there's a lot of options here. And, one really fun part of, I think, the action board is figuring out, because each column is like you got one worker to go to these actions, 2 to go to these actions, 3, and whatnot. But so figuring out, you've got all of these workers, what's the best kind of distribution for going out there, especially when also certain, you go to the 3 column and that lets you like draw or play a card. I forget which one. And so there's just a lot from the worker placement side of things that's interesting. Your whole main board is this, kind of Tetris style placing tiles on the board, which is also your income, as you're trying to move.
It's like engine building through puzzling.
It really is such a creative design, but comes together so well. Like it really, really does. I think just between the kind of worker placement, getting all of these tiles, and you'll have all the tiles down below, and you're figuring out like which ones do I want to, upgrade and whatnot, because there's kind of placement restrictions around, what tiles can go next to what, and but also you use those to have to feed your people and stuff, and so the manipulation of those tiles is a very fun part of that game. Of you're just like reaping in all of these things and then figuring out how to manipulate them best. This is a game I still feel like I'm not very good at in the sense of like, I don't know. I just feel like I'm still not, there's all the islands and stuff. Like I'm not feel like I'm optimizing those. I'm sure good players like, I don't know if they take one like right away or whatnot, but those obviously offer some really lucrative rewards and whatnot. A lot going on. It's a game that could have easily felt very scattered and just like a ton of different things happening, but I think it all, when you're playing it, ties together really well. Definitely a hard one to get to the table. Like, I don't know, of even these heavier Euro games, like this one, it just feels like is another step of difficulty maybe to get to the table, but a fun one nonetheless, Ryan. So
it's a good one.
Here's my number 19.
Nice. My number 19 is one of the longest running entrants on my top games list. It's been around since, in fact, I'm trying to think if there's really anything on my list that we've had longer than this game. It's also the game that during that time has amassed the most raw plays, and that is Race for the Galaxy.
Still very high.
Looks like I'm at 322 plays, so I must at least like it a little bit. We don't play it as much as we used to. We've actually gotten the opportunity to play it at least a little bit recently, which has been nice.
Oh, that was nice.
But man, it's an example of a kind of engine building card game that just the variety of how the cards come out is always a fresh puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
And just the way it kind of constrains, what do I want to play with? What do I want to use to pay for those things? Because you use cards to pay for things.
Yeah.
Creates so many interesting decisions. And it's a race, so there's so much with timing of like, I'd love to play this card, but if I get rid of it now, I could put something out that would really get me moving more quickly. And then you add in the whole like selection of phases and a little bit of like reading how fast your opponent's going and what phases they're likely to be doing, so you can optimize a little more. It's just a very satisfying game that, at least for us, boils down to like 15 minutes, which is just kind of an absurd amount of game in that time. And you're not going to get that, when you're playing with people who haven't played nearly as many times. And it is a game that we've almost exclusively played 2-player. It'd almost be like, I've played a few games over the years, like 3-player, and it's weird.
Yeah,
because it's like, oh man, we could have like, more phases trigger, like there's a little bit more happening.
Right.
But one that I just, it's a staple, and it dropped 3 spots, but it's held here towards the top of my list. So that is Race for the Galaxy. I feel like it's like, what more can be said after so many years?
Jeez. Okay.
Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah, that's a fantastic game. Coming to my number 18, Ryan. This is a new game to the list, but not 18. The highest new game. A little teaser there. This is one that I actually remember we were at a game store near your house, and we walked in, and you saw this, and you were like, Daniel, I think you would really like this game. And going from that point, I had a different game that I ended up has some similarities, maybe just in scope and feel, in Scythe, that I ended up selling, and this one has, I guess, functionally maybe kind of replaced that slot in my collection, and this is going to go to Dwellings of Eldervale. This one we actually got to play together, and
we did.
Didn't I smoke you?
I think you beat me pretty bad. That was the game that
It wasn't that long ago, Ryan. Come on.
That was the game where I had a lot of self-inflicted wounds that were. I remember being quite internally frustrated.
Poor rules teach.
Yeah. It's always my go-to to blame.
This one, it really satisfies my itch for kind of that hybrid style game of like. Yeah. You know, you've got, the map out there, a little bit of kind of, there's some monsters and stuff like that, but also it's like this worker placement. A few really fun parts about it is, one, just the whole dynamic of you're placing people out there, but then in the recall, you're moving people to the action cards that you have in front of you. So there's kind of like this back and forth playing and triggering actions when you come back, which is really cool then when you think about how that interacts with like combat and stuff, because if you go into another tile and I attack your people, and let's say I kill them, those are less workers that you have to come back and take actions for you, which was just kind of it's just an interesting result of combat. Now you get some swords when your people die, and you actually had a faction that actually I think was liked going to the.
Yeah, I had some advantages
going there, which is another cool part about it. It's got the unique factions, which I've played it 3 times, and they feel substantial. Where I'm like, I feel like they offer something that is, it's not just like a little side thing, but it's like, oh, this is pretty cool. What it offers. So the whole, just placing of your people like that is interesting. It's got I guess the scoring feels a little bit like Scythe did, where you've got this element board, and you're of the elements in play, you're trying to kind of go up on that, because how far up you are of each element is how much all the things of that element that you have are going to score. All the cards you have of that element are going to score based off that board. All the, I think, dwellings that you have in on tiles of that element, score like that. So so that part I found was really fun as well. And then I mentioned the dwellings. That's kind of title of the game. Again, just a very interesting thing of you can turn your little meeple, which I just love that little, how you take the meeple, you put a little house on its head. What a great little thing. Makes me so happy. But that mechanic's interesting because you're losing a worker, which is like not good. But that dwelling, gives you like bonuses with attacking in that place and surrounding areas. It scores points at the end. I don't know. It just was a lot of fun the few times I've played it. And it's one that obviously new to the collection, but happy to get it played a few times. And I mean, this is pretty high for a new game. It was a lot of fun. Really, really enjoyable experience. So there's my number 18.
Glad to hear I didn't lead you astray.
You didn't, Ryan.
It's a recommendation. My 18 is a big kind of sprawling game, and one that I very sadly have not played in the last year, and I don't think I played the previous year. I need to make it happen. It's the type of game you kind of have to schedule a day with one other person to tackle.
I'm one other person.
The epic game that is War of the Ring.
Wow.
And this is kind of the ultimate epic Lord of the Rings tabletop experience as far as kind of simulating the Lord of the Rings saga storyline. You begin, the Fellowship has just been formed in Rivendell, and one player is playing the Shadow, one player is playing the Free Peoples, and you're going to basically get to play out this alternate version of what happens in the book or in the movies. And I'm a big fan of the Lord of the Rings IP, and so that's a lot of where the fun comes from. I know a lot about, the real story, and so it's just fun to see it. Like it's a really good strategy game. Like the actual trying to beat your opponent is all very interesting. It's got this whole dice driven thing for taking actions and cards that like are events that like you need the certain criteria for them to be triggered, but then they make sense because those criteria have been met. So it's always like feels kind of like thematic with how it's happening. And so all that's great, but it so feels like a game where so much of the enjoyment is coming from just two fans of Lord of the Rings enjoying seeing this thing play out, like independent of how well you're doing, which is just very cool to have that element with it. It looks very epic on the table. So it's one I have a little bit of a hard time ranking. I've only played it twice, and I haven't played it recently. But it's one I just know I want to play more. I've had very positive experiences with it so far. Just gotta find the right other person, schedule a day, throw on the Lord of the Rings 10-hour soundtrack and
cloak.
Yeah,
yes.
My cloak.
Although to counter to what you were saying, Ryan, I am not a huge Lord of the Rings
You're
fan,
not.
and I thoroughly enjoyed my play of it. So, the mechanics are. That's one I really do want.
Which was honestly something that I always wondered about, because it's an older design. I think the original edition came out in like 2004, which in modern board gaming is an older design. And always kind of wondered, like, is it just because it's Lord of the Rings that it's so highly rated? Like, is it going to feel a little dated? But it's got a lot of mechanisms that feel very fresh, even 20 years later.
Yep. Very nice. Over to numero 17. This is one that also Ryan recommended me getting. This was a culprit of Ryan receiving a picture in the middle of his workday from me that has a wall of games at a clearance section at a store, and me saying, which ones do I buy? So this is the one that Ryan...
Such power I'm giving.
I know. Ryan,
one of these days I need to just get you to buy something terrible.
Oh, you have, Ryan. You have.
Yeah.
And this is going to go to Ultimate Railroads.
Wow.
Yeah. My wife and I love this one so much.
Yeah.
It is. So Ultimate Railroads is cool because it's got, kind of the original Russian railroads, but then these different modules that you can play. We haven't played all of them yet, but we've played, I think, like USA, Germany. And each one is super fun. I mean, the game is, kind of just got, the interesting approach where you've got the three different rails, and you're, so you've got kind of those that you can go for. There's a lot of different paths that you can kind of choose to go. And maybe my only slight gripe is I wish there was a little bit of variable setup that told me which way to go.
Yeah,
sometimes I feel like I have to start just be like, okay, which one do I want to go for? But the path of whatever path you do end up choosing is a ton of fun. It's it's got kind of, worker placement, which, we've played it primarily 2-player. And so, that feels just tight and interesting. Working on your board, kind of the upgrading of your railroad and getting, it's a game that I remember when my wife and I were first starting playing it, we were like, okay, this is pretty good, worker placement, stuff like that. And then you hit this point where the upgrades and chaining of stuff starts happening. I don't know if they're idea tokens or whatnot, but they are crazy powerful, and they and it's oh, I get this, and then if I upgrade this, and it just starts this chain of rewards, and
you're just rolling in points.
And this game you score a ton of points. So that was really where it just it's so exhilarating every time you play, because it's just boom, 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 boom. You're just getting all this stuff, and points are flying up like crazy.
Yeah.
And so it's a blast. So fairly recent to the collection. Have it for a couple years now. But Ryan, I actually just saw this. It moved up 15 spots.
15 spots.
That's a jump, folks.
Big rise there.
Yeah, played it it looks like only 3 times total, but fun every time. So there you go, Ryan, number 17.
Yep, I very much enjoyed my play of that one. But that's high. It's good to see.
It's so good.
So good. My number 17. It's always good to see you liking
I feel like
games.
you're talking about your child or something.
Yeah, I'm so proud of you, Daniel.
So proud.
My number 17 has, in fact, the same theme as the one I just talked about.
Uh-oh.
I mentioned that I like the Lord of the Rings
little
universe. I've actually already had 2 of them on my list, so I guess this is the one that just narrowly snags being my favorite. It's a hard one to compare to War of the Ring, admittedly, but this is Lord of the Rings, the card game. And this is one that I have a lot of history playing. I have 262 plays of it. Most of those are 2-player, though in recent years I've gotten a little bit into like doing solo games where I basically play 2-player. I play because I know the game so well, and there's a lot more fun interactions when you have 2 decks versus 1. But this just for me really scratches that itch of like deck building to then cooperatively take on a scenario and have that kind of like feeling you get from maybe like a dueling trading card game, but in now a cooperative scenario format. And you put that then with a theme that I really enjoy, and it just I've had so many fun games of it that it just has held really strong here towards the top of my list. It's one that they've been reprinting the cycles of in Fantasy Flight's new format, where they package the entire cycle in one box, which is a way better way to do it than their previous model. And they've been re-releasing the actual like saga expansions of the Fellowship of the Ring, the Two Towers. I think they just released the Return of the King. And even though I haven't been playing it a ton lately, actually, funny connection here, I think it was the day you bought Ultimate Railroads
that I picked up
on sale, that you picked up the Fellowship of the Ring box because they had it ding and dent or whatever. It was like super on sale, so you grabbed it for me.
I've got you,
I still haven't played it, but it was one of those things that I'm like, I know I want to have it. I have another campaign that I'm like in the middle of with that game. And I'm like, I want to make sure I pick up the Two Towers and Return of the King at some point because I'm afraid they're going to go out of print. And like, I just want to have them in my collection for the future because I know I will play through them, or even as kids get older, potentially doing 2-player, or maybe I just have somebody else that it makes sense to play it with.
Yeah.
But yeah, a game I've played a ton, played since it first came out. I got it back in 2011 within months of when the game was first released.
Wow.
I'm a veteran, I guess.
Man.
Though I've not kept up with the content, and I never really tried to.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things I really enjoy about it is it's very replayable. Like the scenarios are very replayable. You can mix up the decks.
Right.
So it's fun to have a game like that you can do kind of. I don't always want to do like this deck building that needs to happen outside of playing the game, but I do enjoy it, and it's nice to have a game that you can kind of scratch that itch.
Yeah, I gotta have one. Very nice. My number 16 now is a game we both have, and one that is, I don't know, the theme is kind of interesting. I'll say it like it didn't necessarily thematically grab me when I first saw it. I think I played your copy first, but it's just a great example where the mechanics are so great. And this is going to go to Underwater Cities. This is one that, I mentioned the theme. Like I'm probably my biggest complaint is the tokens you use to take actions. I'm like, what even is this? Like, I don't even know what I'm, at least wish I just had like a meeple or something. But this game's so great. You have the 3 sides of the board, really, the 3 colors that you're choosing to take actions with, which is very tight, when you're playing with other people, like, of which ones do you go to. But then the whole thing where whatever action you take, you can play a card from your hand if it matches the same color of the action you're taking. And like, again, it's one of those things that a designer comes up with that, and it's like so simple, but fantastic. because
it makes the
game.
Yeah.
The whole game, you're just like, okay, how do I optimize? Like, I want to do this, and then I want to play this card. Like, and it's
and you're a tactical guy. And this game, every turn you draw a card back into your hand of 3, and so you're constantly recalibrating. What should I go after now that I have this card?
It's a tactical joyride. It is just delightful, Ryan, and it's one that now I've played I forget what the expansion's called. I know
New Discoveries.
There we go. Very
good expansion.
Very good expansion. Not only upgraded kind of the player boards to be actual like kind of thick, recessed, but it added like a bunch of. It's been a little while since I played it. Like bunch of really great stuff. But still, even with and so all of that stuff was fantastic. A lot of variable stuff that we just love even more. But that core mechanic, it just drives the game, and it's like you mentioned, I love tactical games, getting cards and figuring out optimization with what I'm given. And this game does it in spades. So you have that, and then I also really enjoy the kind of player board and figuring out kind of where you're going to build the cities, domes?
underwater cities. It's underwater cities.
Okay. I guess that should have been a good guess. But then, like, what are the little things you're building? The buildings you're building next to it, and like, do you double them? Because then if you get 2 that are doubled, you.
But you also want to get different ones.
But you want different ones for scoring at the end. Yeah, a lot of interesting decision making, and the expansion adds a lot of variability. So. Really, really enjoy this one, and my wife is a huge fan of it as well, which always helps. I tell you what, right?
I remember that was what made me go like, "You're gonna have to get this game," because it was like multiple times in a row that you guys were back in town,
and she tried it.
and were requesting this game because she wanted to play it again. I was like, "Okay, you guys clearly really like this game."
If your wife, hey, anyone listening out there, if your wife is requesting to play a board game, go buy it. But click the link below.
Yes, support the channel.
You can
good
only
advice. That's great advice, Dan.
Yeah, just general good advice.
It
just doesn't. Yeah.
We're on number 16 here. Number 16 jumped 9 spots.
That's a big jump.
I don't know that I have like a really strong reason for that. It's been one that's been on the list for a while.
These lists are completely arbitrary,
I don't know. No, I think there's a good reason actually. This is Keyforge actually. Very high.
Did you get a tournament in this last year?
And I think that definitely influenced it. And I won the tournament. So
wow.
I'm surprised it didn't climb higher, to be quite honest.
Shocking.
So Keyforge, we have definitely been a big fan of this game, is filling like kind of the just like pick 2 decks and duel style game. Mm-hmm. It's got the super unique aspect of the decks being unique. You buy a deck and no other deck in the world is exactly like that deck.
Right.
But that honestly it's cool, but the gameplay is amazing.
Gameplay is great.
Like the whole thing of your deck has 3 houses and you always declare one of them and you can only do anything with that one house. So many, and every turn is an interesting decision. You'll get a strong board state with one of the houses, but then not have as much of that house in your hand.
So
and you have to kind of decide, do I push my board state, but I won't be able to play cards, and that kind of like slows down my card draw? Or do I take a turn to like clear these 5 cards in my hand that are in this one house just to get my card draw going? Because you always draw back up to 6. So it really, really works just as a standalone game. But then you add in the fact that it then works very well to do a tournament. So, and I'd always wanted a game that I could do this with. I could get, 8 people in for a day event and do kind of a bracket style tournament. And Keyforge has become really the perfect game for it. It is so fun to start the day with. So when we did it this last time, everybody got a brand new sealed deck, and it's like that's your deck for the day. And you start learning it. And we did pool play. So everybody does some pool play. Just you kind of can learn your deck and kind of get a feel for things. Even there, some people that hadn't played the game before can kind of learn it before it's like going to affect the results. And then we go into a tournament, which is then a double elimination tournament. And so it's this full day event. And I just love the dynamic it creates. Like by the time we're getting into the later in the day, people are like, oh yeah, that person has the deck that had that thing in it. Like we like know each other's, and it's one of my favorite full day things I can do in board gaming is like put on. So having the opportunity to do that again, I hadn't done it in several years, I think reminded me of how much that piece elevates this game for me, just the potential of doing those. And it's one that like, you know, I'm really glad it got picked up now by Ghost Galaxy Games, which Christian Peterson, who's the original founder of Fantasy Flight Games, it's his new game studio. So he was able to re-pick up the game that he had brought to Fantasy Flight. And so they're supporting it. They're obviously supporting it at a level beyond what I'm interested in of like competitive play and regular seasons. I just like that I can go out and buy a deck, you know, at any point, or I can, if I want to do a tournament, maybe get a few decks and, but yeah, really great game. If you like that style of, you know, dueling style games and haven't played Keyforge, I would definitely give it a go, especially because it's very cheap to get into. You can find old sets,
right?
You know, and get a few decks and have a lot of fun with it without having to, you know, fully get into it. And
that is we've both won a tournament.
True.
I think I won the very first.
It's one of the prerequisites for being on this channel. Is you must have won a Keyforge
That's why there's
tournament.
only two of us.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Otherwise, there'd be many more.
I've always wondered. Another thing I've always wondered, Ryan, is about my number 15. Have you always wondered that?
Deep
what Daniel's number 15 is? This is a game that I owned and sold, but not because it's not a good game. In fact, I sold to someone very close to me who may be talking to me right now. And this is going to go to Ark Nova.
Ark Nova.
Isn't it a shame to have a game this high and to say
and have your wife not like it?
Yeah. I think she needs to try it. And we've got a friend here that actually owns it, so that also helps. We've played it with them. Yeah. And so it moved up 3 spots, which, you know, is decent. And I think the reason, so this game was already just great. I mean, I love the board that you have, and you really do get the kind of zoo feel of like, you know, placing the tiles out there. And I love, you get an animal and you fill, you know, a place and whatnot. And so the cards are very unique, which is really cool. So really like kind of the whole animal side of it and whatnot. I think, you know, there's just a lot of different things like the you know, scoring objectives, how there's kind of some starting ones, but then you can like put new conservation projects, right? Put those in, very, very fun. It's just a game that have thoroughly enjoyed. And then we tried the expansion. Which did you get? I
have the Marine Worlds expansion now and have played with it.
That is a great
excellent expansion.
Oh my goodness, that was fun. Because I mean, I'm trying to even remember all the things. One of the, you know, one makes those core cards, which is kind of the foundation of the game, is the whole 5 card thing at the bottom where you're
take your actions,
which is how you're taking your actions, and the one on the you know, far left is the the cheapest, and then they like slide down. Is that kind of how that, or
so like your one at the far right is at a level 5, like it would be the strongest one to execute,
right. And so that's again, you know, I talked about with Underwater Cities, that little just manipulation of those cards down there and how to optimize it is so much fun. Well, with the expansion now, even that, some of the cards that you get 2 unique ones, and they're so great. It's like, oh my gosh, this is like truly something that it's like I would never want to go back. This is so much better and so much more fun. And so, if I, obviously I don't own it, but I'm grateful that I have a friend who does and who has the expansion, because, man, this game just hits on, it's kind of gets, you know, it's got the cards. Like I love that in the games. It's got the board is a lot of fun. It just, all of it really, really comes together great. And really at the core, those 5 cards at the bottom, that's a mechanic that I am a big fan of. So
big fan
of simple. I'm telling you, Ryan, sometimes it's the simple things that are just done in a clever way.
Yeah. Yeah, Arc Nova is definitely one that when we first looked into it, like on paper,
it was like
it should be a game we love
for sure.
And it fortunately, lived up to that for us. Cool. My number 15 is a game that I champion a lot more than you. In fact, like, we tend to be pretty close on a lot of games as far as our feelings about it. This is probably one of the bigger gaps in like how much I like it versus how much you like it. It dropped 4 spots, but this is Troyes.
Oh boy.
Daniel doesn't think Troyes should be this high, but I tell you, Troyes is such a fascinating puzzle of a dice game with some very cool variability. The way it uses dice to where, the dice that you're rolling in every round is dictated by where you've got influence in the different areas of the board. But then these aren't your dice. Those are just the dice that you can essentially use for free. You can pay to use other people's dice. And so money as a currency is very valuable because it gives you a lot of power to be able to take the dice to make the groups you want. And then you're sending these dice to do different things around the board. And one of the things that I love is that every game there's 9 activity cards. There's 3 in each of the 3 sections that get revealed round after round that are completely different ways that you can use these dice to, do these powerful abilities. Mm-hmm. And they all work in this way where it'll say like for every 3 pips on your dice that you send here, you get to trigger this thing. So if I can pull something off, and sometimes it's using abilities on other cards to be able to power something up to send a lot of value to a card, you can trigger it 4, 5, 6 times. It just feels like this cool comboing that like isn't capped. Like you can just pull off some very crazy things and suddenly have tons of money or like, get tons of points or things. So I just love that feeling of this tight game of how am I going to take advantage of the things that out here that are in this game is completely different because of these activity cards, but I'm looking for how can I set up these like really big plays that are going to really net me some points. And it's surrounded with some other just like interesting things going on with like the events against the city that like everybody's kind of handling. And if you don't, it's kind of hurting everybody. Everybody's got their hidden like leaders or people that tell you something that's going to score for everybody, but you're the only one that knows it's going to score. And it all plays quick. Like, I mean, we're talking more of a 90-minute game, compared to some of these heavier games. So a game that I really, really enjoy it, and I enjoy it. And then every game is completely variable with those activity cards and everything, that it just has really, really good replay value for me. So, not going to maybe be for everybody. It looks dry. I find it very endearing, really the like kind of the art style and the, but man, it's a good one. I think it stands apart in the kind of, there's a lot of these kind of medium weight dice driven Euro games. And I think Troyes is a special one in my opinion. My number 15.
Another game that stands apart.
Yeah.
Because it truly is unlike any game that I have in the physical nature of it, the 3D nature of it. And there's now a reboot coming out right now. And this is my number 14 is going to go to HeroScape.
Oh, wow.
Dropped 5 spots, Ryan, out of the top 10.
Yeah.
Have not gotten HeroScape to the table since a while, but played it 86 times total. And man, this game, especially as I think about kids getting older, oh my goodness, like it is so much fun. It's kind of it's like a twofold game for me because building the map is a ton of fun. That's like a awesome experience.
No game has quite the toy factor of the 3D terrain
and just just like the creative juices of like, what am I going to make this time? And my buddy and I from high school, I mean, the days where we would just make these intricate, cool things. And then all the, the guys would come over and then you get to play a whole epic battle on the thing that you made. So it's like the greatest reward of your creation then is you get to watch this like awesome game unfold on it. And the gameplay is really fun too. It's simple, like it's moving, it's chucking dice, but the characters have really just unique powers, and so the drafting of them is so interesting. Like, what kind of army are you gonna make? What's the synergy you're gonna do? Then the map, like learning like where are the advantages in the map. You can kind of then, even after we build the map, place the glyphs to really like drive where you want key kind of battlegrounds to happen potentially. This game is so great. I'm so happy they're doing a reboot, and it looks like they're doing a really good job with it.
Yeah.
It's an expensive game, especially if you're
in the year 2024.
Especially if you're getting the painted minis, like it's a lot, although they look great.
They do.
They do look great. So it like, if you're able to fork down the cash, man, do I highly recommend HeroScape. I have so many great memories of it, and I'm happy I held on to my collection, because do need to get to the table again.
It is all compatible. If you ever get really into it again someday,
that is good. They made it all compatible. That's really great. Yeah.
I deep down just know that at some point, as my oldest son gets a little older, it's gonna. I think it'll end up being.
You've spent more money on board games before.
I have spent more money on
games. You can
games.
justify it.
And just like, I've already seen in certain games we've played or other things, just the imagination of a child and the way and this is like the kind of thing that they would, without a game around it, would just play with and like imagine.
Yeah.
And then it's like, hey, we can actually we can reenact these things.
Although they gotta handle the competitive side of it. HeroScape can let's just say my high school buddies, we had some trying times together.
Trying times.
But we got through it, so it was good.
Nice. Yes, it's nice to finally be able to talk about HeroScape and be like, you can actually
get it.
Get it.
Yeah,
like,
I know.
It's back. My number 14, you already talked about. So crossover in this segment.
Well, my number 13.
And talked about recently, this is a game that is in a very competitive category in our collection of as far as like the weight of game, the length of game, but it is held its own despite not breaking into like my top tier. It's held its own as one that I just really still enjoy, and that is Underwater Cities. Daniel talked about the main mechanism of, you're going to these action spots, but you also want to have colors of the same card. That drives a lot of what you're wanting to do, because which actions do you want to do? Which cards do you want to get played? And then that's all feeding into this kind of engine building this network thing in front of you so that you can be producing more at the end of each generation. I forget what they call it in this game.
No idea.
And be able to do even more. And the new Discovery expansion really did amp it up with more asymmetrical boards that you're using. You now get a unique personal assistant at the beginning instead of, all having the same one. It just has got some really nice stuff that it's one of those games that I think I sometimes forget how fun it is until I'm playing it.
I totally agree.
And then when you're in that process of like, get a card, I've got these 3 cards, what I'm going to do, it's very addictive. It's very satisfying. And so it only dropped 1 spot this year, despite there being 2 new games actually still left on my list. So it essentially went up relative to the non-new games. And it's one that I think will hold its position in this area of my list. Very fun one.
Very nice.
Underwater Cities.
Yeah, I honestly think it's I think it's the theme a little bit that makes me like not immediately grab it. Yeah. It just doesn't have like a grab, a theme that's like, like others might. Speaking of games that have trash themes, this game might win the award for like worst theme to best gameplay. Ryan would say Trois. Actually, no, Ryan wouldn't say Trois because he would say this game, I'm guessing. And this is going to go to Lorenzo El Magnifico. This truly was a game that when Ryan brought it out the first time, I was ready to hate it. I was just like, okay, this is just
gotta give it a fair shake.
This is just another dry Euro, no theme whatsoever. Actually does kind of have, I guess, a slightly interesting theme with like getting excommunicated and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, what other game do you have that you can get excommunicated?
In some ways, it's actually kind of unique. But boy, is the gameplay good. Different parts of it just resonate with me so deeply. The rolling of the dice at the beginning of the round to determine the value of your
everybody's
workers. That is glorious, and I love that it's for everyone because it brings this shared group feel of either like, oh my gosh, we have like an abundance of riches, or oh my goodness, what are we gonna do? So there's a real just challenge in there. This game has such good engine building. You're building up kind of these rows in front of you. You kind of got two different ones that you can be triggering and whatnot. So there's a lot of just this satisfying engine building happening there. The not drafting, I guess, but that worker placement and taking of cards is so interesting, especially with the tension of like, you got to pay gold if you're in one with another worker, and you can't do two of your own color in the same one. And so there's just this game is tight. It's really tight.
It is tight. It's this weird thing where it's so tight, yet makes you feel like you can do some really
big,
powerful things. It's like that manages to like keep both of those.
And then, just with the all the content in this version, that has, you can play with I'm not even sure what these are all called, but just at the start of the game you get these like a family or a clan or whatever,
houses of the Renaissance.
And just such unique starting stuff.
Powerful.
Very powerful. Like
really
truly
powerful.
Something that you're like, oh my gosh, this is like,
it's like, oh, you know how everybody has 3 workers?
You have 4.
You just have a 4th one for the whole game.
It's crazy. So
wait, what?
This one got to play it once in the last year. It was actually pretty recently. Got a 4-player game in recently, and
nice.
Man, a game to have this awful of a theme and be this high for me really says something. I tell you what. So number 13 goes to Lorenzo El Magnifico.
Very nice. My number 13 is my second highest new game on the list. This is a high debut, and I would argue it's the highest completely new game, because my other new one kind of has a caveat with it.
It's not new.
But this is completely new experience, and one that I had eyed for a long time. I always kind of was curious about it. It's an expensive game. It was always hard to kind of pull the trigger on it. Very complex game. Honestly, one of the hardest games to learn in my collection. And Daniel will attest to this because we tried to learn it together for the first time. This is Too Many Bones. Too Many Bones is a complex game. And you got to get over this hump to where you feel comfortable with a lot of the basics. Hump. And there's games that like do a good job of, cutting the fat and streamlining. This game kind of embraces it. Embraces that like, hey, there's going to be, you might every third game get this card that you're going to play some other mini game that has its own whole page of rules in the rule book. But like, that's just the type of game it is like really leaning into that. But man, what a fun cooperative experience as you each have these Gearlock characters that have their own completely unique set of dice and upgrade paths and how they work. You got to go ahead of time and watch a 30-minute video on how your character, works to kind of like deeply understand it.
Love it.
But then you're going to go through these series of, encounters where a lot of the encounters is combat on this 4x4 map with these really nice poker chips for all the components that you're stacking, the health chips below them, so that's the height of the stacks is the health of things. And then you've got this tactical combat puzzle as you're fighting these things and working together. And especially I recently played a 3-player game, and I think, man, that's where it really shines. It's good with 2, but 3, the dynamics in that battle, you get more interesting compositions of the enemy because you're able to hit into the higher like point totals that bring out more bigger things. But then with 3 of you, just the way you can work together to accomplish things, there's just a lot more flexibility, I guess. It's a long game. I mean, you're talking 3 hours or more probably to do. It depends on which Tyrant you play.
Right.
but hugely satisfying co-op experience. It feels in a similar category to me as Mage Knight, which is a game that we also very much enjoy, of just this, you gotta put in the work for all the complexity, but man, does it deliver you a satisfying experience. And for Too Many Bones, it's that experience with more of the dice rolling excitement. Mm-hmm. And so it's fun we enjoy that type of thing. And so I've only played it 4 times at this point, all in the last year. But one that I just really am excited to explore more.
Yeah,
debuting very high at my number 13.
Yeah, that's one that if I played it more, I know it'd be in my top games. So there you go. My number 12 is a game dropped 5 spots. That's kind of a lot, I guess, at this height of games. This is one you actually got to play recently, because you finally got a copy of it, even though we used to own an older version of it. And this goes to Through the Ages, A New Story of Civilization.
Nice.
Did get a play of it in this last year, which,
I did as well, but it was after we locked in this list, so it wasn't on my list this year. So you're not going to see it pop up.
Oh, it's a shame. It's a shame because this is a great game. It takes a lot of what we love from just like, kind of the engine building of your civilization in front of you, and taking it and taking it through this large scale, moving literally throughout history, beginning at the very start of, Moses and these people, and you've got, very primitive army things to, by the end, you've got fast food restaurants, and it's this really just high level thing. But the game just is so fun from a figuring out how to solve this just engine puzzle that you're in of, I need to, you're never able to do everything. It's like slightly frustrating, actually.
It is.
It's like,
you're like, I have 6 civil actions, and you're like, wait, if I get that card, like I can't, or if I work on my wonder this turn.
Yeah. And it's
hard.
There's always a little bit of dissatisfaction of like, oh, I want to do more, but man, just like producing resources to play more things. You're just constantly, going. I need to get more people. I need to upgrade my food. I need to, oh my gosh, I'm getting obliterated by the army. I got to do that. Man, this game is just so deep in the mechanics of it, but one that I enjoy thoroughly. I find the just drafting of the cards is so fun every time. Like, which ones am I going to prioritize? Which ones am I going to go for? And they feel just so like impactful. Like getting a government suddenly changes your actions that you have drastically. It's so great. So very long one, but one that I'm always happy to get to the table. At my number 12.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking like a 4+ hour game
at like
for
2
this
players,
usually. And even longer if you play with more. But there is something to be said of with it being such a slow build and everything you're doing is like not easy. That is like immensely satisfying.
Oh, very.
Like, it's fun when games you can build up quickly, but there is something about like moving through it and just feeling like you just really, accomplish this through hard work.
Totally.
I don't know.
Yeah, totally.
So it's actually like kind of a positive in some ways as long as you're up for it.
I'm always
a good one that I anticipate will be on my list next year. Now that I've actually played, like we both have played the old version of it.
I hated that.
Probably like 10-15 times.
Yeah, I remember Ryan,
but now have the new version.
Wars on me over and over again. That was great.
Yeah, sums up our childhood. My number 12 was my number 12 last year. Holding right in the same spot. I've played this game 50 times and 22 times in the last year, largely powered by the fact that I don't need to find anybody else to play this game with me because it is a solo-only game. In fact, my favorite solo game. This is Final Girl. Final Girl takes a lot of my favorite things in like a thematic cooperative game, like an Eldritch Horror, or some of these games where we're just going to get this shared experience with all this variability. Mm-hmm. And it puts it into a solo game that plays in 20 minutes and has just such great variability, even within a scenario, like playing the same map and the same killer. There's so much that can go differently with all the stuff that's variable there. But then you add in the fact that you can mix and match any killer with any map, and it's just blown wide open with the experiences you can have with this game. And it's definitely got that factor that we talk about with a game like Eldritch, where the floor of games you can have is lower than other games. Like, you could just get decimated. And like in those instances, you just got to kind of like laugh as like the story of it and just kind of the funny thing. But by doing that, you also raise the ceiling of just the exciting, crazy things that can happen in the game. And in my 50 games, I've had tons of games that have either been amazing comebacks or just like an interaction between an event and something that happened that was very funny and created like a very creative solution to how I was going to like survive and like attack. And it's just a game that I have really, really enjoyed and kind of has become a go-to, at least in my current stage of playing solo games, because I can play it pretty quick, so it's easy to squeeze in on a night. And it's always just that, you know, you're opening the sandbox, right? It's like, what's going to happen this time with this one and this one? And I have season 3 on the way. That is just going to be more options to mix and match. So I'm all in kind of on the final girl thing. It's honestly a game that there's a little bit of me that's like, I kind of wish I could share this with some other people, and it would be fun. We actually did it once where I kind of had you play and I kind of coached you. But it would even be fun with 2 people that know the game well to just like, 2-hand co-op it.
This is a game that I'm like, if I liked playing solo games, I know I would love this. This would be
the first one I would recommend.
I don't like playing solo games. So there you go. Very nice, Ryan. Okay, let's get to our number 11. This one lengthwise is similar to Through the Ages. Very long game, very big game, just a large scale. We have played this. Almost all of my plays of this have been with you, and this is Twilight Struggle. This game, I think I definitively say, has the best blending of a theme and mechanics just in my collection. Like the integration of how it brings out this, Cold War with such great mechanics. I mean, the getting a hand, we talked about this, I think in, earlier in the video, but with some other games, but like getting a hand and being like, what am I going to do with this? Because not only might you get a scoring card and you're like, okay, do I score it now? Oh my gosh, I'm down. Do I do I try to flip it, or do I just hold? Or, if you get all of your own events, like that's kind of exciting. If you get your opponent's events, that's less exciting, but you're also happy that they don't have those, and figuring out like, how do you manage that hand? And in a game that starts at like, you've got 3 kind of continents you're worried about in Europe, Middle East, and Asia, and then the game just scales as you opens up, and by the end you are like, you're managing the whole globe with these just incredibly fun cards, trying to like throw your opponent off of like, where do I care about, trying to flip things. So you're trying to almost be sneaky in a way. I love how different regions have different feels. Like Europe, it feels, and thematically again, is super stable. And like, man, if you can flip a battleground in Europe, that's, oh my gosh, huge. Yeah. Whereas Africa, we're just cooing up back the yin yang, man. Like we're just flipping it like it's nobody's business. So, gosh, this one, it honestly, it rose a spot, and I'm just thinking about it again. I'm like, this game is so good. It's so good.
We need to
I know.
play it, find a good way to play it digitally. I know we could, there's the like official version of it that you can buy. I don't know if there's a tabletop simulator mod, but it's one that's overdue to get a good play with the two of us.
It's so great. And I don't lose in the early war anymore to you. So
and the game is, man, it's one of my favorite things in any game, honestly, is when you get into the mid war of this game, of just, because it's just the way it opens up and the potential things.
Very nice.
Brilliantly designed game. I guess I'm bringing us home here with my number 11, which I was just talking about, not realizing it was going to be my next pick. This is a game that has been in my top 10 ever since I first played it. So this is the first time it's dropped out. Just barely dropped out of my top 10. But one of my favorite and one of my group's top favorite cooperative games. This is Eldritch Horror.
Out of the top 10.
It is out of the top 10. I guess it was number 10 last year, so it dropped one more spot. And you know, some of that, it's always hard to know how much of it is like, well, how good were my most recent plays of Eldritch? Because it is a swingy game. You can have really good games. You can have games. You know, I've had a fair amount of Eldritch games that you're at the 2.5 hour, getting to the 3 hour mark, and you're like, man, I kind of just like want to play something else on this game night, or like kind of want to like this. It's too bad this Eldritch game didn't deliver, what it kind of fell into a lull. You know, we kind of got stuck, or just there's a lot of things that can happen. But that's also what we love about it, is there's a lot of things that can happen. Yeah. The decks, I have every expansion for it, so the just variety of items, of events, of everything that can come out, and while there is so much randomness, I mean, we're talking like there's all this input randomness of the things that are setting up things, but then almost everything you do to resolve like events and stuff is output randomness of you have to roll to resolve. And despite all that randomness, it's a highly strategic co-op game. There is a ton of how do we work this round to play the probabilities in our favor, to set ourselves up, and it feels so amazing when you come up with creative ways for the team to do something,
and it works out,
to give yourself a shot, or to get rid of a gate that we needed to get rid of, or whatever it may be. And so it for me, while it's so thematic and it's so much of that excitement and variability, I don't think I would love it that much if it didn't also have that strong feeling of strategic thinking and working together as a group. So one that is just an absolute staple in this is a long game that has gotten consistently played in our group for over a decade, and is still one of the most requested games from the people in my group that really enjoy it. Great memories playing Eldritch Horror. Just misses my top 10 this year.
Just misses it. But there's more games to come, Ryan.
There's more. The best games.
The best games of all time. Games that you're going to want to smash that button below and buy every single one of them.
Save your money, because you're buying 10. You're buying 20, somewhere from 10 to 20 games in this next video.
To tell the wife, set aside the money. It's going to get bad, folks.
Hey, that's so sexist. It could tell your husband, We appreciate you all, our women viewers.
I'm sorry.
I think we can actually see in YouTube our demographic. We need more women in gaming.
I apologize. There you go, folks. That is our number 20 through 11 of 2024. Hey, friends. We appreciate you watching. And if you want to check out any of these delightful games that we have chatted about today, you can go down to the description below. But we've got a video that Ryan and I both would agree is objectively better than this one. And that's our 10 through 1. So when that video comes out, it will be linked right here. You can click on that and see the best of the best. We'll see you in the next one.